Hi, everybody. My name is Andrea Boykowicz. I'm the Executive Director at Oakland Planning and Development Corporation. This is a development activities meeting. Actually, sorry, realizing that I don't have all of my notes in one place. This is a development activities meeting that has been rescheduled from the previous week due to a miscommunication on our part. But this is for a project at 461 Melwood Avenue. And joining us today, in addition to Elizabeth Gray, who's on OPDC's staff, are Christian Umbach from the city planning and David Roth, who is the architect for this project. Is that correct?
Correct.
Very good. I'm going to hand it over to David, potentially also to Christian, to be able to explain the nature of the project, what all is going to be involved, the timeline, and for Christian to explain what, of course, you may share, um, uh, for Christian to explain what exactly the variances are that are being sought. And David has begun sharing.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll let David kick it off and I can jump in as needed.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for your time today. Is anybody familiar with this property at 461 Melwood?
I've never been inside, but yes, I know where it's located. So it's in direct proximity to the former filmmakers building that is now owned by CMU. And I think it's very closely adjacent to the proposed buildings of the Parker and the recently completed Julian. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
And actually, this process of the design is going to require variance because the former UI zoning, right, has been changed.
Mhm.
And so we actually started, when I share, can you see my mouse?
Yes, we can see your mouse.
Great. So you're familiar with the building here, which is in my background.
Mhm.
Um, I started working with this client on partially changing the occupancy of putting in these multi-suite residential units, which were a permitted use under the former zoning, under the UI zoning. Um, but the new zoning does not permit our proposed use, which is for self-storage. And it's almost as if some of these ordinance changes begin to leapfrog the life of these buildings, because clearly this building, almost in its bones, seems to say it wants to be a storage building for a couple of reasons. And I guess you're also intimately familiar with the terrain over there and the fact that Gold Street is like one level up
Mhm.
from um, Melwood, and then it means that the first floor of the Melwood entry level is landlocked and inside the hill, so there's really no exposure on the back for it. And it's a really unique building in the sense that it seems like almost from its inception, I think it probably was some kind of like car dealership back when it was constructed. And so there must have been car showroom on the first floor, and then car, storage and parking on the second floor because it's access from Gold. So be that as it may, it's a unique building in this zoning district that when we originally conceived of this project, it was still UI. And then as we finally got around to doing it, the zoning has changed. And so that's what we require a variance. And again, it's pretty straightforward. I think that, like you mentioned, you know, the owner has been using this entire building when he first bought it as his office space, and he will continue to use a small portion of it for that, but does not need as much as he has been using. And indeed, part of the functionality of that initial use was that he was using it for his own business storage. So the building has been used for storage, I think, probably at least for the last 20 years plus. I think he bought this building at the end of like 1999. I think they've owned it that long. Um, and so as we were thinking of various uses for this, the idea of trying to find compatible uses for whatever else is going down the street, particularly the tall apartment buildings. As an architect, I'm very sensitive to the fact that these apartments are pretty small. and that they don't have a ton of storage. And so bottom line is I think this would be a welcome addition to the neighborhood, that even what you're seeing on the screen right now is just my initial test fit of showing what would be typical market size, initially 5 by 5 foot storage rooms, which amount to like a closet. But that would be, for overflow storage. This is clearly not the final design. It's meant to just show the density that we're considering. And so, based on the square footage, I think that we could fit this many in there. And the way that the building works is that it would have 3 separate entrances. It has a common area hallway that is the access for the multi-suites. And then it has a common stair, which goes up to this second floor parking area. And then there is the entrance for the storage. It has a loading space in front of it currently. So for short-term loading, it could be used for that. And so, again, I think it's compatible use. It seems to be low impact. And, this is very much a background building. And I think that who knows, what the future holds for development. There's no question that this site is big enough to support a building such as the ones that you were just mentioning that are happening adjacent to it, but not at this time. So best and highest use, this was what we have come up with.
Can you tell us just a little bit about the structure of the building? So it's like a masonry shell? Like how is
Yeah,
it?
it's a type 3B common construction. It's a steel building.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just a diagram. I can show you the actual plans, but there's columns and beams in the building. But this is not depicting those. This is working sort of with it. And I can show you more of the guts of the building, from the previous submission. But
No,
suffice it to say,
sorry.
the structure is not. It's pretty much a clear span structure upstairs with a giant trusses, and then here pretty conventional construction. It's got a concrete floor, and it's waterproof in terms of that. There's really no issues that are major issues above what would typically be expected in a building this age.
I guess I was mostly asking about its adaptability for future use. Going forward, could there be a situation in which it gets redeveloped, according to changing needs and so forth? How
Well,
adaptable is the structure?
I'm very much aware of the trying to what we call a loose fit and a long life for these older buildings. But again, this is uniquely sited and topographically challenged, can I say, because of the way it's landlocked at this level. But there's no question that if it was a multi-story building above here that would fill the zoning envelope, that this would be a classic situation of the hillside really working for a project. I know that in parking garages that I have designed, and the ones that I see going up right now, and the ones that are really efficient space wise are the ones that don't have any internal ramping. And so something like this, would lend itself to that. It make for a perfect 2-level, and again, podium construction, which we see as being state of the art. This would fit that recipe ideally. But I think it would mean the building would really be torn down. I don't think that this is, in terms of its adaptive reuse, it really is, very much a background building. And it was probably built for that single purpose of it being an automobile dealership back in the day. And to the degree that we're adaptively reusing it for things today, there really is very little other than this kind of thing that could, function without any daylight.
Right.
So, but also I think that there is a synergy, honestly, with the need for storage with the neighboring buildings going up. And if it's encouraged for, multi-unit or multi-unit apartment buildings, I think these people could all use a place to use, just for, their seasonal storage. And I luckily have weaned myself off of my self-storage years ago. But that's another story. I think it's clearly something that's needed. There's other storage obviously available, like Guardian and such, that in the Strip District. It's not like there isn't storage available, but I think that this is, again, uniquely situated so that, for example, if you live down the street and you wanted to, get to your dead files or something that you didn't have room for in your home office upstairs, then, it's within walking distance to go down the street and grab it. So there you go. It's my presentation. I'm sorry if I'm like turning this into something bigger than it is.
No, it's totally fine. I appreciate the overview. Liz, I'm sorry, were you saying something?
No. I was just interested in the layout, particularly considering the way it's wedged into the side of the hill there.
Have I considered it?
No, I was just interested in the layout because of the way the building is wedged into the side of the hill.
Yeah.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you weren't interrupting. So, yeah, so there's entrance, basically you're preserving the drive-in capability from both the Melwood and the Goldway sides of the building. I know it's flush up against the CMU building on the one side. Does it have a party wall with the building on the south part of the building as well, or?
I think so. Yes. And it isn't there like something like a ghost kitchen or something that's located there?
Like a China something or other.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that there was any space between the two buildings or if it was contiguous the way it is with Filmmakers Building. So maybe Christian, I could ask you, I know that I don't mean to put you on the spot, but the question of why it was that self-storage was left out of UCMU by any remote chance. Can you, because I've been racking my brains trying to figure out like why did we not allow that? And maybe you have an explanation.
Sure. Yeah, no, thank you. I was able to look at kind of the zoning and the use table. So yeah, I can provide a little bit of context. Thinking about just kind of the character of the UCMU, urban center. I think it just comes down to, what are we using our space for? And so I think this district prioritizes housing and employment uses. And I think storage uses were not, I think, prioritized just in terms of, I just think I think kind of what David was saying, highest and best use of space. Not wanting self-storage to take up a lot of these zoning districts. Now, saying, given that, I think it's one parcel here and there. I don't think that's out of the out of the realm or detracting from it. But I think it's just, that's the main thing. Another thing I noticed is that, this area is close to some like high frequency transit. So I think also that prioritizing housing and employment. The other one that came up when I looked through was these zoning districts, as you know, prioritize active ground floor uses. So that would be like storefronts and shops where there's activity going on. And a lot of times storage units are kind of closed off from the street. And then I think the final rationale would be, a lot of times storage, people are driving to storage. So it can be argued that it's okay to have it further away. But I mean, David brings up the point that, hey, in some places you might want to walk. But yeah, that's kind of the general rationale from kind of the zoning standpoint of why it was not included.
I think it's an interesting kind of like moment of it being a little dated in our concept of what is necessary for a residential to support a residential district. Like one can imagine a self-storage unit in, say, for instance, I don't know, sort of a low market, low density, maybe even suburban or ex-urban location in which, belongings are being stored really off-site and it's just because the land is cheap and the development space is cheap. This is actually
Right.
prioritizing service and support for nearby residential that is not car dependent. There are 3 large residential projects that are happening. One of them already built, obviously, but then the other 2 in process on Melwood right there that don't offer, I'm sure, sufficient self-storage for, some of the populations that are their sort of target market for that area. So which include, students, but also do include, young professionals, which is to say folks who are not maybe bound to being where they are for a very long time and, have the tendency to
Yeah.
move a little like snails. So, um, it's sort of an oversight, like I appreciate the suburban model that you have in mind when saying like it's maybe not the most appropriate use for the an urban setting like this where housing and where commercial uses with an active floor are desired. But this is kind of, like this is the plumbing that goes into making those things work sometimes. So um, sorry, this is me
No,
expressing a
no,
variant
this is,
opinion, but like trying to
yeah,
rationale,
no,
because the UCMU district is so new, and we haven't really tested too many new projects in the UCMU zone. This is just one opportunity for us to kind of talk through what the rationale was for the use table that really emerged. Sorry, David, you get to be.
I'm sorry, Andrea, that's very thoughtful rationale. I agree with it. And also maybe, again, I'm familiar enough with, zoning to know that, one size does not fit all, especially in a unique city like ours, where we have a lot of adaptive reuse, challenges or opportunities. Right. And so to the degree that it can happen in little pockets here and there, and then you know circle back to this little project, it would not be the worst thing. I know that whenever possible, and I honestly can't think of a multi-unit building that I recently have designed that has storage in it.
Yeah,
Although my office is in Uptown and it's in a small building, 8 units, and we do have like a little like small storage area downstairs that, believe me, mine is full of stuff. It just is. We have a tendency to have stuff. We just do. And so anyway, again, this is a unique building with a unique challenge, and then thinking through um, what could possibly happen in there right now, because it is not being used as much as it was before by the owner. He has less need for it.
Can I?
And oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Liz.
No, I just wanted to ask about the access on Gold Way. That is going to not be a loading area. There will be no loading, offloading there, correct? That is
No,
just
and
entering.
realistically, I think that in the zoning that um it really is a little bit vague in the parking requirements. And so there didn't seem like it said that there was one parking space required per loading bay, quote unquote. And that was interpreted by some of the folks in zoning that I spoke to as meaning that we actually do not have any loading bays. What we do have, and I think it was sufficient that I submitted, is like I mentioned, there's an existing loading space on the street that's right adjacent to where we're proposing our entrance to be. And so
On Melwood or Gold Way?
on Melwood, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But Melwood is really the only access to the building. Goldway is really parking that actually has zoning approved 7 parking spaces for the multi-unit, and it's shown up here. These were the 7 spaces that we sort of carved out and reconfigured the existing parking. And then the rest of the spaces, I think he rents them out for like $200 a month to people in the area.
Yep.
So it's a separate business that he has currently. So the long and short of it is that we are providing some parking for the folks that are using the self-storage, and they would have to get there not with an elevator. There's no elevator. It would be steps. And so we're not talking about like intensive storage where there's like dollies, in that kind of frequency. As you can show, I'm sort of carving it up right now into what I would imagine would be almost the most dense configuration. And it, whether or not we have this many of them, this is what I would consider to be almost the maximum number of them. I can envision like half as many, twice as big. You know what I'm saying? So this is just how the space would work. And I didn't want to go into this meeting without being able to show you that.
Thanks.
One other piece of context that I can share when we look at residential self-storage in the use table, it really only is permitted in the urban industrial, general industrial, highway commercial, And so similar districts to the UCMU that are more urban, like local neighborhood commercial, urban neighborhood commercial, and others don't have it. So I think just to reinforce that the urban center mixed use is kind of in line with the other districts that are similar. So to be honest, into exploring and testing it out, it would probably be testing it out throughout all the districts to think through that, just to express that the UCMU is not like an exception. If this was rezoned to some of those other districts that are common throughout the area, like the urban neighborhood commercial, for example, it would also not be permitted. So
Okay, let me just ask a procedural question of what you all think. Is that typically would not recommend anything to my clients that I didn't think was possible. So, going into this, I said to him, look at it, it used to be UI when we first started renovating this building. And that, to me, what I would consider to be a hardship is the fact that he bought this building as a UI building and now the zoning has changed on him. And that we're really not changing anything more about the building. We're trying to work with the nature of the building. So, I mean, as long as I could, the first things that Alice and them ask me when I go into a variance hearing is, do I have the support of the community? So I will not bother them with this unless you all feel comfortable that this is workable. So that's why I guess we're here.
So I was actually going to ask you, Christian, if you could also sort of just explain for the record, for the future viewers, what the hurdles are that a variance needs to clear. There are 5, I believe, criteria that you need to kind of work your way through for variances to be granted. Do you have that?
yeah, I can share the link. I don't have them on top of my mind, but I know that, the hardship is kind of the primary angle where, there has to be something unique and specific to this lot that causes a hardship for the applicant to develop it in strict conformance. And I know that it can be an economic hardship. It can be a physical, characteristic of the site. But yeah, I could pull up that here to share.
Yeah. I mean, just for context also, I would say that in this case, right, this is not a lot. This is not just an empty space in which you can just, build a building. Somebody's not choosing to build a new building here. Somebody is looking for a viable use for an existing structure that was designed for zoning that no longer applies. And the recourse, to being able to make this work would be to demolish the building, and that seems counter to what it is that we're trying to support here. So this is adaptive reuse that's appropriate to the context. It is not changing the building form, and it's supporting local uses. I know that doesn't clear the necessarily the hardship hurdle, but it does satisfy the pieces that incur, no additional traffic or harm to the neighborhood fabric.
Yeah, I was able to find
Thank
that
you.
section of the code. I believe these are the 5 criteria. Unique physical circumstances or conditions, and then it goes on to list kind of what that could be. No possibility that the property could be developed in strict conformity with the zoning. Such unnecessary hardships were not created by the applicant. Let's see. If the variance is approved, it does not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, and the variance will represent the minimal variance and minimal amount of relief. So yeah, those are kind of the criteria there.
Yeah.
So,
Which I think in this particular case, we're mostly, there are physical circumstances, not the least of which is that the building itself shares a party wall with 2 existing structures. So, this is minimizing harm to the existing environment here. It's up against the side of the hillside, there's a limit to what it is that you can place in this building, that is not the kind of storage that has already been used here. You know, it wasn't as if the appellant has caused this specific hardship. And if anything, you know, granting the variance allows the character of the neighborhood to be preserved. You know, like if you can't do it, then you have to demolish and start over, which I think is pretty straightforward. So we will keep this recording up and we will call attention to it. We'll let our neighbors up in North Oakland know if they have opinions that they should review this video and lodge their questions. We will relay anything that we receive, any of the comments that we receive to Christian and to the zoning board. I can't think of anything. I know it's difficult in a circumstance like this where we are not in the presence of the audience that we're trying to target here to sort of anticipate what people's questions would be. But I think the main concerns that we've heard about projects in the past in this corridor have to do with traffic, which is to say through traffic. This isn't a project that's going to originate any traffic, and it may be a destination, but the destination will be accessed almost certainly right off of Baum, right? Nobody's going to be driving down Goldway from Polish Hill in order to be able to get to the storage unit. Not really. And it isn't as if it's such a volume that it's going to contribute meaningfully to anybody's traffic complaints. So, and since it doesn't involve demolishing an existing structure, some of the other concerns have been about height and character change. This is preserving an existing structure, and it's, you know, two-story height. It's not going to interfere with anybody's views. It's not going to add to the impermeable surface. Am I missing anything? Liz?
Nope.
Okay, then I'm going to rely heavily on the neighborhood to tell us what it is we might have forgotten, but I don't anticipate that there's going to be much objection to this shift, which seems incidental. So, David, do you have any other questions or final remarks on your project?
Well, final remarks, there's usually, I'll give you what sometimes is my opening remarks. And that's that I go into every project asking myself, is this an evolution or a revolution? And clearly this is an evolution of this building. It's not, like you mentioned, it's not a significant change and the impact seems low. And it seems like even the use of it is going to be intermittent. You know, it's not going to be a rush hour with people lined up to, right. So I do think that I felt comfortable recommending this to the owner as a possible use, and I think that it can work. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to end the recording here.
Thanks.